Thank you, Dr. Adit, for opening this platform for me to share my peace of mind on the issue of national education policy and commerce education. I'm thankful to ICA NCR chapter for being very thoughtful and very timely to have this kind of opportunity, to create this opportunity where rolling out of national education policy is taking place. And undoubtedly for that, Professor V.K. Shrotriya and his team deserves a lot of compliments. It is academic only who not only thinks about the strategy, but thinks about the tactics also, that how to make things happen actually. So thank you, ICA NCR chapter, my esteemed colleagues who are there on this electronic dais, Professor Shrotriya, Professor Madan Lalji, Professor Dangi ji, Professor Urvashi Sharma, Dr. Adit, Dr. Rajnikant, and other colleagues from different colleges and from different parts of the country. I'm intimated that Professor Sunaina could not join because of some medical emergency in her acquaintance. When I was listening to my predecessors, that what this national education policy is all about, and where from this anxiety is coming, that why such kind of the deliberations are necessitated, why this lead to have such kind of occasions has become the need of the hour. Speakers, they have already talked about that, what this national education policy is. Professor Dangi has gone for looking at the historical perspective of creation of education policies. So Dr. Rajnikant Verma Madanji has gone for looking at that, what is the need of the equity and equality, and where this commerce figures in the entire schema of education. I'm sure that all of you have referred the document of national education policy. It is 66 pages document. And without going into much repetition of what the preceding speakers have spoken about, let's look at some of the contours of National Education Policy 2020. Which says that the fundamental of the education is to achieve the full human potential through the development of an equitable and just society, along with the promotion of national constitutional values, very pious fundamentals of National Education Policy 2020. As Professor Madan Lal highlighted, that it speaks about ensuring inclusivity and equitability along with the quality education, and also speaks about lifelong learning. The preceding two speakers, while highlighting the national education policy, have said that policy document is too good. But there is a need to look at that how this good policy is implemented. And the implementation of this ideal policy, that will decide that what the visionaries they thought while developing this national education policy actually is achieved or not. The para 9.1 of national education policy talks about that higher education has to significantly contribute towards sustainable livelihood and economic development of the nation. And when we are talking about the sustainable livelihood and economic development of the nation, there is no need to stress upon that the role of commerce education in the entire schema of the education, as far as this national education policy is concerned, that goes very prominent, very dominating. And as the role of commerce education becomes very prominent, then the role of the academic, the role of the stakeholders, the role of gurus, that becomes very prominent. And I'm sure that this event and such kind of the events, they will be helping us to come out of the zone of comfort and mull over that what this policy envisions and how we can think in terms of achieving what this policy is created for. The para 9.1.1 says that the study should go for creating the areas of specialized interests where the students can have the deep learning. When we are having such pious goals of national education policy, the responsibility further becomes onerous. And when I see that this shiksha, the etymology of this word shiksha is, it comes from a verb, shiksh. Shiksh is to learn. Shiksh is to study. But over a period of time, what I have seen, that the verb of shiksh has more become a noun, and these days is more becoming a pronoun. And the kind of managerialism and the kind of the bureaucracy which is setting in the education, we all feel the heat. The kind of the demand for the data which comes from the high ups, the kind of the activities we are made to get engaged in. When I open in the morning my mailbox, I'm always scared because I find roughly 30-35 mails coming from the different offices of the university demanding different kind of the data on a given timelines. सुबह आपने मेल बॉक्स खोला 6 बजे और उसमें आदेश ये होता है कि शाम के 4 बजे तक ये बता दीजिए कि आपके डिपार्टमेंट में जो चिड़िया उड़ती है उसके कितने पंख हैं. आई एम यूजिंग अ मेटाफर. And the next time it is either what is the kind of birds which fly in your department. So with the managerialism and the bureaucracy, the role of academic is multi-prone. That is why this verb has become the noun and pronoun. And there placing ourselves and finding our foothold, that what is the responsibility of the teacher and what is the responsibility of a commerce teacher in this national education policy, that is of great significance. Our ancient wisdom says that sa vidya vimuktaye, education must give us liberating effect. What has got fixated in us, that must be liquidified. Whatever has got stale in us, that must be removed so that the fresh air comes. And this national education policy is demanding that how to let that fresh air set in our education, and that too in commerce education. And this is the right forum to share 2 of my recent experiences. There is a paper in BCom Honors which talks about the costing standards, which were introduced in 2019 when there was a revision of the course. When it came to teaching the new costing standards, there was a huge resistance from the teachers कि अब की छोड़ देते हैं, अगली बार से पढ़ाएंगे कॉस्टिंग स्टैंडर्ड. अभी स्टूडेंट्स को बताते हैं कि कोई कॉस्टिंग स्टैंडर्ड नहीं है. With such kind of the practices, do you think that we would be able to take up the challenges of national education policy? It will remain only a rhetoric. And all efforts of the ICA or any agency, until and unless we go for giving our thoughtfulness in it, the mindfulness in it, it will remain only a matter of debate. दूसरा उदाहरण देता हूं. शिक्षाविद चूंकि यहां पे उपस्थित हैं, एक पेपर बनाया, उसमें क्वेश्चन पेपर सेटर बनाने, आपको पता है कि दिल्ली विश्वविद्यालय में जो अंडर ग्रेजुएट के क्वेश्चन पेपर्स हैं वो अंडर ग्रेजुएट कॉलेज के टीचर्स ही पेपर सेट करते हैं. एक पेपर में पेपर सेटर्स के जो बोर्ड ने थोड़ा अनऑर्थोडॉक्स पेपर बना दिया. उसमें दैट वेयर एक्चुअली वी आर एंड वेयर वी वांट टू गो. Our scriptures say that yasya nasti swayam pragya shastram tasya karoti kim. That if education is not able to build the wisdom, shastram tasya karoti kim, the degree is not going to come to your rescue. Therefore, there is a need to look at the entire schema of education, that we are here only to impart the degree, or we are here to impart the education. And if we are thinking in terms of imparting the degree, then, and if you are thinking in terms of imparting the education, the roadmap of commerce education and the roadmap of the commerce teaching in national education policy would be different. As predecessors, they have already gone for talking about different kind of academic institutions. And Professor Dangi and Professor Madan Lal, they have mentioned that there would be autonomous degree granted colleges. Right now, the autonomy has a very oxymoronic meaning in our education system. Autonomy is given to institutions, autonomy is given to colleges, but for all practical purposes, there may be little autonomy of the college. Let me, there may be some relaxation from the university bureaucracy, but then the colleges go in the trap of the governmental bureaucracy. और डिग्री कौन ग्रांट करता है? डिग्री ग्रांट करता है यूनिवर्सिटी. बट इस एजुकेशन सिस्टम में प्रोविजन है कि ऑटोनमस डिग्री ग्रांटिंग कॉलेजेस होंगे. तो अगर डिग्री ग्रांटिंग कॉलेजेस होंगे तो जिस तरीके से हम शिक्षा को देख रहे हैं, क्या उसी तरीके से शिक्षा को देखेंगे और उसमें वो सारी चीजें हम अचीव कर पाएंगे जिसके लिए ये नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी बनाई गई है? इस पर विचार करने की जरूरत है. एंड द पारा 10.3 and 10.4, it says that in times to come the graded autonomy would be given to colleges, and two types of institutions will emerge: the research intensive and teaching intensive. And as you know that the education in present times that focuses more on research intensive education, there is a need to think that how the commerce education would be made research intensive. There was a paper in BCom honors where the students were made to take up a research project in the 5th semester, and they used to do it for 1 year, and towards the end of the 6th semester they used to submit the project. And what happened with that pious introduction of research based teaching that everybody knows. Therefore, there is a need to understand both that what the idealism is and what the realism is, and how we can go for making it more pragmatic so that the pious objectives of national education policy could be achieved. We talk about multidisciplinarity. नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी को जब मैंने एनवीओ में रन किया तो हमने देखा कि मल्टीडिसिप्लिनरिटी 70 बार आई है. 70 टाइम्स. 66 पेज के डॉक्यूमेंट में 70 बार मल्टीडिसिप्लिनरी शब्द का प्रयोग किया गया है. 50 बार ऑनलाइन शब्द का प्रयोग किया गया है. और यह लिखा गया है पैरा 10.11 that single stream higher education institutions would be phased out, so that interdisciplinarity, that is the talk of the town, the need of the hour. And as preceding speakers have focused on that, commerce in itself, by nature, is multidisciplinary. Because there is no one discipline which is commerce. This is limitation also of the discipline of commerce. And this is one of the greatest advantages also of the discipline of the commerce. When I was working a couple of years back on a project, then I identified 5-6 pillars of commerce. Pillars like accounting, pillars like finance, pillars like management, pillars like analytical tools, pillars like laws, and pillars like economics, which are needed for commerce to happen, commerce to unfold, how we are going to look at these pillars and this element of multidisciplinarity and how we are going to leverage it in terms of not only in terms of looking at the workload, but in terms of making commerce to come out of the flying colors, making this commerce education not only most sought on the basis of the cutoff of the admissions, but the most sought in the eyes of everyone. And the responsibility for that, the responsibilities of the academic, that is onerous. This commerce education, what we are talking about, couple of other realities also need to be understood in if we want to make our commerce education more meaningful in the entire schema of the national education policy. That this national education policy para 10.10 says that institutions will have the option to run open distance learning and online programs. अब आप सोचिए, ये सिर्फ कोर्स का रिवीजन नहीं है, और कोर्स के रिवीजन की जो पिछले बार की रियलिटी मुझे पता है, उसमें कोर्स के रिवीजन में हमारा इंटरेस्ट कम होता है, इस बात में ज्यादा इंटरेस्ट रहता है कि मेरी किताब लगी कि नहीं सिलेबस में. When we will go for offering our courses online and through distance mode, then synchronous and asynchronous teaching both will go together. Right now, majority of us are engaged in a synchronous teaching, where the teacher and the taught both are present at the same time, whether physically or virtually. But with this provision of 10.10 of National Education Policy, this teaching as such would be transcending the time and space. And I would be forced to upload all my teaching material on the web and make students to learn at their convenience. So if this is going to happen, then role of the commerce teaching, that has to increase, that has to expand manifold. Then it will not be only confined to that I will give one sum to student and the students, if they solve, then I will say कि मैं तो आला दर्जे का अध्यापक हूं. So roles and responsibilities in the given schema of national education policy, UGC says, I think 40% credits students should be allowed to earn through MOOCs. 40% MOOC से अर्न कर लेंगे. इंस्टीट्यूशंस जो है वो ऑनलाइन कोर्सेज ऑफर करेंगे, डिस्टेंस लर्निंग प्रोग्राम्स ऑफर करेंगे. Don't you think that this is going to challenge our very existence of being a commerce teacher? It is not, I'm not talking about the workload. Workload will reduce or it will increase, that you decide. But the responsibility, the roles and responsibilities certainly will change. And this I always say that University of Delhi is a star in the galaxy where the academic institutions all across the country, they look up at. Therefore, how this commerce education in a given schema would be a nodal center in Delhi University for creation of the knowledge and innovation, for ensuring the right kind of the quality of not only commerce education, but education in general, that needs to be deliberated upon, that needs to be thought of. And education often talks about sharing the factual knowledge, sharing the conceptual knowledge, sharing the procedural knowledge. But more important than these three, that how to cultivate a cognitive faculty of the students. And not only cognitive faculty, but metacognition there in the students. What the market needs. A great educationist used to say that there are three ways of imparting education. The first way of imparting education is didactic way of imparting education. The second is the meiotic way of imparting education. And the third is the facilitative way of imparting education. So from being a pedantic teacher, where the responsibility of the teaching and the learning of the student lies with the teacher, from this, the departure to that the onus of learning would be there with the student. ये यात्रा बहुत ही मुश्किल की यात्रा है. ये गंगोत्री और यमुनोत्री जाने की यात्रा है, जहां पे जाने के साधन नहीं है. और पॉलिसी, जैसे हमारे पूर्व वक्ताओं ने कहा कि पॉलिसी बहुत अच्छी है, पर वो किसी का शेर है कि घर सजाने का तसव्वुर तो बहुत बात का है, पहले तय ये हो कि इस घर को बचाएं कैसे. Therefore, in the present times, with the changing realities, what the practices, as you know, the commerce, which always interacts with the changing context, buys its cues from what is happening around. It goes for deciding the course of action of the market, and of course being impacted by the market. So what is happening there in the world, we can't remain untouched. And if the students or the people, or we are included of course, are making a departure or taking a course of action of symbolism. क्या सिंबलिज्म? जैसे आप मैसेज जब भेजते हैं अपने व्हाट्सएप पे या इंस्टाग्राम पे, तो लिखते कम हैं और स्माइलीज और इमोटिकॉन्स और उसकी जो भी और भी जो कैटेगरीज हैं, इमोजीज, मुझे तो आई एम सॉरी, आई एम नॉट गुड एट इट. तो दोनों आंख एक तरफ हो, आंख की पुतली, तो उसका क्या मतलब है? आई बॉल्स अलग अलग डायरेक्शन में हो, नीचे हो तो क्या? तो मैं तो कई बार अपने बच्चों से पूछता कि अच्छा बेटा इसका मतलब बता दो कि इसका क्या है. मैं तो इसको समझता था कि हाथ जोड़ने का ये सिंबल है, तो मेरी बेटी ने कहा नहीं तो हाई फाई है. सो व्हेन आवर प्रैक्टिसेस आर ऑफ symbolism, and I'm talking about myself, that person being in the academics more than 3 decades, who is trained for verbalism, I believe that my speaking will go for making my students to learn. But this departure from verbalism to symbolism, the commerce education, that also needs to undergo a change. And that change will not happen when you will think that हो जाएगा, ये करना पड़ेगा. Along with this verbalism and symbolism, the days are gone where we were focusing on intonation. Now the focus is shifting from intonation to annotation. यानी सस्वर पाठ करने की जगह पे अब भाष्य करने की आवश्यकता आ गई है. Because the kind of the context we are in, be it commerce, be it some other discipline, we find that the teacher is no more a pedantic teacher. The teacher is not the source of knowledge. Teacher is a facilitator. Teacher is a co-creator. And teacher along with the student is creating one kind of the reality. Both of them are not into looking at the truth. सत्य तो कुछ और है. हम वास्तविकता की बात कर रहे हैं. So when teacher and the taught both are creating a reality, then the annotation, the element of criticality. The other day in some similar kind of the seminar, I was saying that World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab has gone for identifying the 10 skills. And the most important skill out of the 10 is thinking critically. So when we are made to, now this entire education system is how to make conformist. I will not go for naming the teacher. एक प्रोफेसर साहब थे, हम अगर उनके बताए हुए सिंबल्स को यूज नहीं करते थे और अपना सिंबल बता देते, अगर ऑर्डरिंग कॉस्ट को सीओ की जगह पे ओ लिख देते तो नंबर काट देते थे. So this departure from conformist education system to critical thinking education system, the challenge is very daunting. And that needs to be addressed. The learning agreement between the teacher and the taught, that is undergoing tumultuous change. I am no more the person knowing the gospel truth and will give my sermons to my students, and they will be a passive note taker in the classroom, be it physical or virtual. अभी पिछले फ्राइडे को मैं क्लास ले रहा था ह्यूमन रिसोर्स डेवलपमेंट की, और वहां पे इसी वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम के इस बात का मैंने जिक्र किया कि उनका एक रिपोर्ट है जिसमें 10 स्किल्स उन्होंने आइडेंटिफाई किए हैं. बाय द टाइम आई फिनिश्ड माय सेंटेंस, वन ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स उसने ठक से जो है वो वेबसाइट को एक्सेस किया और उस वेबसाइट का एड्रेस चैट बॉक्स में डाल दिया. सो वी आर टीचिंग द फ्यूचर रेडी स्टूडेंट्स in terms of accessibility of the information in the present times of infodemics. They are at par with us, rather, at least to me, they are much ahead than me. There it would be a question of my survival, that how I will be able to maintain my position when the learning contract is changing. Because here learning is not happening inside the classroom. This national education policy is saying that learning will happen outside the classroom. Let the learning happen outside the classroom. And let this learning go from outside to inside. उसको आत्मसात करने के लिए हम एक कॉन्टेक्स्ट, एक वातावरण क्रिएट करें. पर आत्मसात करने के लिए उसको वातावरण क्रिएट करने में जो शिक्षक की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है वो कई गुना बढ़ जाती है. और मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी सब्जेक्ट्स, कॉमर्स के लोगों की जिम्मेदारी और बढ़ जाती है. उस पर विचार करने की जरूरत है. उस पर बार बार ये देखने की जरूरत है कि हम कहां हैं और कहां अपने आप को ले जाना चाहते हैं. प्रोफेसर डांगी was talking about that from 1.6% education on GDP to target to 6% of spendings of GDP on education. It is not only government which will decide that this expenditure is done to the tune of 6% and the job would be achieved. Monica Gulati, could you mute yourself? So responsibility is that how much we go for spending. Not spending in terms of money, but spending in terms of the other resource of time. In understanding that this multidisciplinary, it is not accounting, it is not finance, it is not HR, it is not tax, it is not business law, it is not statistics, it is not mathematics, it is much beyond that. जब हम अपने इन विषयों को अपने अंदर हृदयंगम करेंगे, तब हम जो नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी का ऑब्जेक्टिव है कि बाहर से ये अंदर की तरफ जाए, इस बहुत ही शुद्ध और पवित्र उद्देश्य की प्राप्ति करने के लिए अपने आप को चैलेंज करने की बहुत आवश्यकता है. Else this education will remain a noun. And with more bureaucratization, it will become more pronoun. Less pronounced and more pronoun. And the kind of the challenge which this national education policy is creating for us for academic. It is not like this that we will look at only one part and the rest of the things will remain untouched. No. There is element of organicity and there is element of holisticity in this national education policy. And that holisticity could be achieved only when we understand that where we are and how we can go for improving it. So that there was one professor at Delhi School of Economics in economics department, Professor Tendulkar. He used to say that if you want to maintain the status quo, run fast. So in order to maintain the leading position, instead of patting the back, there is a need to run at a faster pace. And that would be possible when we realize that what this national education policy actually demands. And this multidisciplinary, ये सिर्फ इन विषयों को पढ़ा देने से मल्टीडिसिप्लिनैरिटी नहीं आती है. अकाउंटिंग, फाइनेंस और मैथ्स और इकोनॉमिक्स और लॉ पढ़ाने से मल्टीडिसिप्लिनैरिटी नहीं आती है. उसके लिए मल्टीडिसिप्लिनरी सोच पैदा करने की जरूरत है. और मल्टीडिसिप्लिनरी सोच तब होगी जब इसके बारे में थोड़ा सा और विचार करेंगे हम लोग. तो जरूरत है बैठ के विचार करने की और अपने सहभागिता की. लास्ट टाइम जब 2019 में कोर्स का रिवीजन हो रहा था, तो रिवीजन होने के बाद बहुत सारे टीचर्स आए कि साहब ये नहीं हुआ, ऐसे नहीं हुआ, तो इसमें ये ऐड हो गया, उसमें वो कट गया, इसमें इनकी किताब आ गई, इसमें मेरी वाली किताब नहीं आई. And for a good period of time, Delhi University had gone for uploading the structure and the entire syllabus online, seeking the feedback of other stakeholders. बहुत सारे फीडबैक्स और आए थे हमारे पास. उसमें 90% फीडबैक ये था कि इनकी किताब हो जानी चाहिए. This time also, Delhi University has passed some structure for implementation of this national education policy. कॉमर्स का भी स्ट्रक्चर दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी ने दे दिया है. उसको देखिए. बीकॉम ऑनर्स का क्या स्ट्रक्चर है. बीकॉम जो प्रोग्राम है उसको नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी ने खत्म कर दिया है. उसकी जगह पे दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी उसका नॉमेनक्लेचर रखा है बीकॉम बैचलर ऑफ कॉमर्स स्टडीज ऑनर्स. विजिट बोथ द स्ट्रक्चर्स and see that how things are unfolding. This is what Professor Madanlal and Professor Dangi were hinting. कि पॉलिसी तो बहुत अच्छी है, पर इंप्लीमेंटेशन कैसे होगा वो डिसाइड करेगा कि पॉलिसी अच्छी थी कि खराब थी. कोई भी नीति अपने आप में खराब नहीं होती. रावण की नीति थी राम से बदला लेने की, वो खराब थोड़ी थी. उसका तो परिणाम ने डिसाइड किया कि रावण ने अच्छा किया या बुरा किया. मेटाफोरिकली स्पीकिंग, अगर रावण की जीत होती तो दूसरी कहानी, इतिहास कुछ और बता रहा होता. Therefore, we have to think over it. आप उस स्ट्रक्चर को देखिए. उस स्ट्रक्चर में आप कहां हैं, आपकी तस्वीर कहां है, उसको देखने की जरूरत है. मैं यहां पे आपको यह नहीं बताने आया हूं कि उसमें आपका कोर्सेज का नंबर कम हो गया है और जो आप 3 साल में पढ़ाते थे वो आप 4 साल में पढ़ाएंगे. मैं ये आपको नहीं बताने यहां पे आया हूं कि आपके जेनरिक कोर्सेज जो है बढ़ गए हैं और बाकी सोशल साइंसेज और साइंसेस में जेनरिक कोर्सेज कम है. आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट दैट. आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू गिव यू एनी रेडीमेड पैकेट which you will take and you say that this what the commerce education is. You go and think over it. Mull over. Raise your concern. Find out that where commerce education is heading to and how the pious objectives and the vision of National Education Policy 2020, how this ideation would be converted into reality, that you will decide. None else. And here the role of commerce teachers that comes to play a major role, a very critical role. टुमारो यू से कि ये पेपर हट गया और वो पेपर ऐड हो गया और उसमें स्टैट्स नहीं है, मैथ्स नहीं है. The structure, if it would be given by the University of Delhi, the mandate is there, we will go for doing what university asks. And none else other than you has to go for raising the concern. पूरे नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी के पूरे स्कीम को देखिए, उस पर विचार कीजिए, उसको पढ़ लीजिए पूरे डॉक्यूमेंट को, और उसमें देखिए कि कॉमर्स एजुकेशन कैसे लीड ले सकता है. जब हम कोर्स का रिवीजन करें तो उसमें हम क्या नई चीज लेके, आपने जेनेरिक ऑफर कर दिया, आपने डिसिप्लिन स्पेसिफिक ऑफर कर दिया जो दूसरे कोर्स के बच्चे पढ़ेंगे. अगर आप वही कहेंगे कि भाई हम तो इसमें वही पढ़ाएंगे, हाउ टू प्रिपेयर बैलेंस शीट, तो हाउ टू प्रिपेयर बैलेंस शीट, आप बैलेंस शीट तो हमेशा बनाते रहते हैं हम लोग, लेकिन जिंदगी का बैलेंस शीट कभी नहीं देखते हैं. अकाउंटिंग के बैलेंस शीट में हमेशा जो है एसेट्स लायबिलिटी से मैच कर रही होती है, जिंदगी के बैलेंस शीट में कभी एसेट लायबिलिटी से मैच नहीं हो रहा होता. एंड वी नेवर गो फॉर गिविंग सच काइंड ऑफ द रिफ्लेक्टिव आइडियाज टू आवर स्टूडेंट्स. हमेशा हम बता रहे होते हैं कि हमारा जो प्रोबेबिलिटी है वो 0 से 1 के बीच में वेरी करती है, बस जिंदगी की बहुत सारी प्रोबेबिलिटीज का कोई कैलकुलेशन ही नहीं है. वो हो सकता है कई बार नेगेटिव चली जाए. Therefore, there is a need to think over that where we are, because एक बार ये स्टेशन से गाड़ी छूटेगी, तो अभी डांगी साहब बता रहे थे कि कितने वर्षों के बाद ये रिवीजन हुआ है, अगले ये किस स्टेशन पे रुकेगी ये हमें नहीं पता है. तो अगर हम इस गाड़ी के ड्राइवर और गार्ड बनना चाहते हैं, पायलट बनना चाहते हैं, तो उस पायलट बनने की जिम्मेदारी का निर्वाह करना पड़ेगा, और उसके निर्वाह करने के लिए अपने आप को तपाना पड़ेगा. Then only we would be find that this embedded enter in the multidisciplinarity of commerce education that could be leveraged not only to make our students a good citizens, not only to make them to earn a good living, not only to showcase that it is commerce only which can go for changing the entire sphere of the market and the society and the nation and the economy. Else it will remain that we will remain subservient and accepting the way things are happening. I'm again thankful to ICA NCR chapter for giving this opportunity to me to share my scattered vague ideas on this national education policy and this commerce education. And I'm sure that such deliberations will help our teachers to be more reflective and think that how they can go for contributing to make commerce education more meaningful and education in general more close to the heart of the society and the people. Thank you so much. Namaskar.